Hello and welcome to a challenge mode, a little bit of a guide, but also a little bit of a explanation between what is going to happen between Warlords, which is our current expansion, and Legion, which is the expansion released as of September 16th, or whatever they have on the website. I have no idea. All I hope is that it's going to be an extremely good expansion, and if you see me looking up, we have the MMO champion website here on our left, and Wowhead up top. And the Wowhead one is basically, these are our currently challenge mode weapons. These are all of our two-handers. This is the one-handers. The two ranged, the pulsing rifle, and the bow. And the offhands, all three shields. Now, why are those important? Well, Legion, the Blizzard developers, have clearly stated that you're going to be getting a token on your alts that allow you to transmog the Legion weapons onto those alts. So, say you're working on a warrior, and the warrior can use the two-handed sword, the one-hander, and a shield. So that's only 3 or however many weapons are currently up here, and he can use any of those, or she. In Legion, let's say you wanted the Great Sword of the Inferno, which is this sword here, on your paladin. Well, you walk up to a vendor for a certain amount of gold, I believe, and they haven't specified, but this is just my presumption. But you're going to walk up to a vendor, you're going to hand them a currency, and they're going to hand you a token that you run over to the vendor where you got these, and you can go pick it up, basically. Now, I don't know if they're going to be doing that for the MOP ones, and I didn't get the challenge modes in MOP, but if they do, it'd be pretty interesting to see. But anyway, a few changes they're going to be doing from Warlords to Legion is they're extremely, like, some of them are extreme changes and others are like, oh, we're just going to bring some implementations from Diablo 3 over to World of Warcraft. So if you're a huge fan of Diablo 3, now is a good time to start playing WoW to get used to at least a little bit of how a character reacts and stuff like that, and like where to be situation-wise on a target, because in Legion, each class is going to have a different character fantasy, and it's going to be totally different than what the class currently is. I've been watching a few guides by Asmongold, Bajheera, there was one by Swifty, and I'll have each one of those YouTubers in a link below. Go look at them. They're extremely awesome. Shout out to them. Keep making awesome videos. But anyway, a few changes from Warlords to Legion is challenge modes will no longer scale a player down to a fixed power level. So currently in Warlords, man, I wish we were in Legion, but Warlords, your gear is scaled down to item level 630. Even if you have like 700 or 730, your gear is scaled down to 630. No gems, no tertiary stats like speed, leech, or tier sets work, but all trinkets like soul capacitor, or the giant AoE cleave off Manaroth, the drinking horn, I think that's what that's called, work. So people cheese mechanics off of that. That way. In Legion, your character itself is not going to scale down like that. There are no longer bronze, silver, and gold timers, just a time that's roughly around silver. The leaderboards will focus on the highest difficulty level you have cleared, not the times. There won't be any unique cosmetic items this time around, but instead different artifact appearances. So, with the leaderboard, you currently have gold, silver, and bronze. bronze being like an hour, silver being like 20, sometimes 12 minutes, and gold being like anywhere between 8 and 10 or 8 and 20. I mean, they're kind of lenient right now, but the whole point is to get gold for the transmog weapons, and so that way you can transmog the transmog weapons. In Legion, they're just going to have a silver timer, and the leaderboards are going to focus on the highest tier you've cleared, not the timer. And remember that, because I'm going to go into that later in the video. A charged keystone can be used to start the challenge mode dungeon. Keystones come from world quests, with everyone able to obtain one each week. There may be opportunities to get additional ones as a bonus. Keystones have a power level that determines the difficulty and reward. The higher the power level, the higher damage and the more health. So, a little side note behind that. Say you have a charged level 1 keystone, and you go into the Halls of Valor, which is going to be an example later, but you go into the Halls of Valor, and a mob's health pool is like 500k. That same mob with a charged level 2 keystone would be 520k. They're just going to increase everything that happens. In Legion, they're also adding what's known as affixes, or affixes, into the game. Kind of like how Diablo has Molten, or Arcane, or Electricity. It's going to be a little bit that revolves around that. One of them is going to be enemies in rage at 30% health, doing 100% increased damage. Another is additional enemies appear in the dungeon. And another is enemy corpses explode, do more damage shortly after death. Basically meaning that it's kind of like the Molten in Diablo 3 right now, where after you kill the mob, a couple seconds after the mob dies, it explodes, and the mob does a ton of damage. And if you're on a Torment 10 Rift in Diablo, and you get hit by a Molten, if you don't have enough toughness, your character just gets one shot. And it's kind of funny. The party takes consistent damage over time in the dungeon. So, if we want to compare that to current things, say you get a red dot from a warrior, or a bleed from a rogue, or the druid's heal, for example. You're going to be taking that type of constant damage over time on every party member in the raid, and I feel like druids, because they're not changing them very much, druids are going to have an extreme advantage in challenge modes, because their healing over times, unless they're dispelled, go through a roof. Keystone affixes will be in the same for each region each week, so there's no reason to find an optimal keystone, meaning that the North America realm, Brazilian realms, the European realms, and the Australian realms, each one of those realms are going to have the exact same party members taking damage or enemies in rage. All those are going to be the same, so you don't have the RNG of having to find certain people in your dungeons. Keystone affixes, when you successfully clear the dungeon, is also upgraded to the next level. If you fail to clear the dungeon before the timer expires, your keystone is depleted. If you beat the timer on a depleted keystone rune, your keystone is upgraded and powered again. Basically meaning that if your keystone is, you don't run it, but if you do not run it, and you beat the timer, you run it and you don't beat the timer, sorry, you still get a loot crate at the end. And one of their examples are, you're trying level 6 Halls of Valor, that's just barely fail, and you get a level 6 quality reward crate at the end for your group. Now you have a depleted level 6 keystone from the Halls of Valor, and you can try it again And after you run it one more time with that depleted stone, it becomes a fresh level 7 keystone ready to give you loot. Here's a little bit of what those keystones are going to look like. It's sort of like Diablo, where you throw it in the little rift deal and they just send you straight in there. A little bit about the dungeons and loot. The system will be slightly high above heroic difficulty, basically meaning it's kind of like where mythics are right now. I don't know if they're going to keep mythics in Legion, but if they aren't, it's going to be about how mythics are now. The difficulty of challenge mode dungeons will be able to scale endlessly. There will be a level cap on loot quality. So an example they give here, which is about right here. If a tier 20 challenge mode dungeon is very hard to complete, they may cap the loot potential, even if there are a couple groups that can go higher. So if one group hits 20, the other group hits 21 or 22, those groups that hit 21 or 22 aren't going to get any higher piece than if they were to do a level 20 rift, or tier in this case. This is somewhat like how current challenge modes have a gold timer that is designed to be obtained by virtually any reasonable balanced group. Players can try for even faster times for prestige or leaderboard ranks, but there aren't any higher increasing rewards. You get a jackpot at the end of the week with loot quality based on your run, significantly higher than the rest of your runs. There's a possibility of getting a lucky upgrade from the regular runs, sort of like the Warforged versions there are now in Mythics, where you can have anywhere between 685 and 725, I believe, before upgrade. And sort of how they were saying just a little further down below, loot will range in a scale of item levels somewhat like Mythic dungeons offer in current content. While there's a chance to get items equal to the ones of Mythic raids, but they don't go higher than Mythic raids, because it is going to complement it, not replace. Meaning that Mythic raiding is still going to be the highest tier of loot. All the challenge mode gear is just going to be like heroic plus. For players who do normal difficulty rating but actually prefer smaller groups, so say you're doing like a 10 to 15 man dungeon raid in the next expansion, this can replace your rating because it still gives you heroic plus loot at the end of it. Challenge modes are not going to become part of the LFD or LFG. Guilds, social circles, and group finder will be where you can find the players. So within that little thing where dungeons are and you hit pre-made groups, from the sound of it, they're going to be adding one down below that says challenge modes. Having an unused keystone is a desired commodity, so people will be lining up to use your keystones on a Sunday. Meaning, if you stack a few keystones, those stacked keystones will be able to be used multiple times because you'll just be upgrading the item level. A little bit about the Legion developer info underneath our challenge modes. Sorry. WoW team has never been larger. 250 people on the team. If there are 250 people on this team, why is Legion scheduled to release in September? Now, I have a feeling, and this is for another video, but I have a feeling it's going to be released sooner, and I'm going to rant on that in a later video down the road. The team really wanted to decrease the time between expansions, so in Warlords they went with one major content patch, not having the breadth of content and different patches like they had in previous years. Ending up being a big mistake. Yes, it did, because 6.1 and 6.2 combined should have been one patch, because neither of them were really like a patch. It's like everything in this expansion would be considered one patch, in my opinion. Other than the raid, Hellfire. Legion should have a cadence of all content that makes the game feel like it is changing a little bit more than it has in the past. Sorry. Yawn. A little bit more on the Legion gameplay. The Broken Isles intro, so the pre-patch to Legion, is going to be released 4 to 6 weeks before Legion actually launches. And the funnier thing behind that, they had specifically stated, they being Blizzard, that it's going to be a week, the Demon Hunters. Well, pre-patch, if we look further down below, Demon Hunters are going to be able to be played in the pre-patch, meaning that they are going to be able to be played a month to a month and a half before the actual release. Where are they going to get their gear at level 100? Probably the Baleful stuff, but we'll never know until it shows up. The storylines of the Broken Isles intro will explain the Ashbringer and the Doom Hammer and why they are ending up in our hands. I'm excited for that. The Prestige system, so the PvP reward stuff is also going to be added, meaning that the honor points and the conquest points are going to be disappearing, but as we know, that's usually for 47 silver per point. So when they announce this, go farm that for gold. That is going to be like a really big gold increase for some people. And then it just goes on to say a little bit about a class preview and how they're changing the spec. And then there's comments on that page down below. I'm going to be putting the link up top and the link over here in the description, along with Bajheera, Swifty, and Asmongold's videos. Go watch them. They are extremely awesome with their content. I highly recommend them. Thank you for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe. And stay tuned for more Legion info.